Oh, finally, the S25 Ultra. I've been saving for this my whole life. The Snapdragon 8 Elite, the 200 megapixel camera, the 1 terabyte storage, 120 refresh rate. Wow!
Are you broke? Like, how can you not afford an Apple?
Those in front of you are 3 of Samsung's most iconic releases: the Galaxy S5, the Note 9, and the S25 Ultra. At first, they might seem like just regular flagship models, with different designs, release dates, and price tags. But these models mark one of the biggest shifts in Samsung's history. A shift that took Samsung, a company once known for innovation, creativity, and culture, and slowly turned it into Apple's copy, or as we can call it, the Applification of Samsung. Samsung's journey in mobile phones started back in the 1980s, but its real dominance began in the 2000s. We can call this the warm-up era, as most phones at that time had styluses or physical buttons. Obviously, nothing special here. But in 2007, Apple dropped its first iPhone. The 2007 iPhone was not the first touchscreen phone invented, nor the first phone with apps on it, but it was the first phone to combine a sleek design, multiple features with a cool user interface and experience, and of course, a stable apps ecosystem. This was a massive revelation at that time, and we even made a video about it before. Everyone was fascinated by the iPhone's features, except for, and you know it, Samsung, because they knew that if they didn't catch up fast, they might end up as the next Nokia. 3 years later, Samsung introduced its first Android flagship, the Galaxy S, or as it was called back then, the iPhone Challenger. Both phones were very similar, with no flashlight, a physical home button, and a touch screen. A bit slower, but Apple was 2 steps ahead of Samsung, because we're talking about the 2010, and Samsung had just started, while Apple was already dominating with the iPhone 4. But Samsung didn't give up, and got very aggressive the following years, releasing a new S model every year with bigger and more upgrades. This period felt like the Cold War for both companies, Samsung releasing a new model every year, while Apple releasing the S version of their previous iPhones. Expandable storage, removable batteries, 1080p quality, FaceTime, metal design, Touch ID, improvement, improvement, improvement. Until... the year is 2014. Apple announced its first Apple Watch, Facebook bought WhatsApp, and Samsung released their brand new model, the Galaxy S5. Back at that time, Samsung was the dominant with a 24% market share, right before Apple at only 15%. Now Apple exceeds it with 27% and Samsung at 23%. This phone was a masterpiece at that time, compared with the S4 and the S3. This model had a lot of exciting features: a fingerprint scanner, water-resistant, and faster USB transfer. This phone, without any doubt, marked the start of the ultimate innovation era for Samsung, as most models that came after it were unique and brought real upgrades. On the other side, Apple was evolving too. At that time, both companies were making magic. For example, when the iPhone 6 didn't have a heart rate sensor and water resistance feature, Apple introduced the Apple Pay with NFC, which was the peak technology for users at that time. Samsung eventually followed the next year with the S6, which was the first phone to feature a dual-edge display with a premium glass and metal design and a fast wireless charging. Of course, the downside was the removal of the microSD slot and the removable battery. But the microSD made a comeback with the Galaxy S7, with a bigger battery, always on display, and the introduction of the game launcher. At that time, Apple introduced the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus, and although it was the first iPhone with portrait mode and stereo speakers, Apple made a controversial move with the removal of the headphone jack under the cover of environmental protection. But that was far from the truth, because in that same year, Apple introduced the AirPods, meaning now you were forced to buy them. It's true that this move shocked many of Apple users, but little did we know that Apple has just started one of the worst trends in the smartphone history, and we'll see its impact later. 2017, the S8 versus the iPhone X, one of the best upgrades that happened in the smartphone's history. the first iPhone with an OLED display, the first iPhone to feature the Face ID and the removal of the home button. Same on the other side. First Samsung phone with iris scanning and facial recognition, first Samsung with an infinity display, and first model to feature a USB-C port. Just when we thought that's the peak, Samsung kept pushing. And this time, with the most feature-packed Samsung ever, the Galaxy Note 9. That phone was the first of its kind to feature the 512GB storage option, and with the addition of microSD expansion, that was an insane combo. It also had the biggest battery ever at that time in Samsung history, with 4000 mAh, same as the standard S25, and the first S Pen with Bluetooth remote control. Wait, still not subscribed? Come on, bro. All you have to do is follow the damn train! Like and subscribe. Now, I can already hear someone asking, why did you mention the Note 9 instead of the S9? Well, the S9 was great and had few solid upgrades, but the Note 9 was literally the last everything phone in Samsung's lineup, because after the release of the S10 later, things start changing. 2020, the year that deserved the worst year ever title by the Times magazine. I was hosted there too. Yes. Anyway, 2020 was a major shift in the smartphone world. Apple released its three main models, the iPhone SE, the iPhone 12, and the iPhone 12 mini, which was great for its small size, but didn't sell well, due to its poor battery life. So Apple stopped producing it. But what sparked the controversy is Apple's decision to remove the charger from the 12 box. Now this had a major reaction from the fans, which saw this move as another way from Apple trying to milk every penny from their customers. But as we said before, Apple had already started this trend of removing existing features, so at this point, nothing was surprising. What was surprising though was Samsung. Samsung released 4 models in 2020, the S20 series, the Note 20 Ultra, the Z Fold, and the A51. The S20 was the first S model with a 120Hz refresh rate display, and also the first model to remove the headphone jack and heart rate sensor. Alright, fine. That's normal. Maybe Samsung is working on a new feature for the S21. The next year, Samsung removed the microSD card slot and the charger from the S21 box. All under one motto: cutting costs, increasing profits, and slowing down innovation. And all that led to On March 16, 2022, Samsung CEO Han Zhonghee bowed in apology over the S22 performance issues, admitting that the company had failed to understand customers' concerns about the phone's performance. However, 2 years later, the CEO came back with another apology, and this time for only making $6.8 billion in the last quarter. The whole apology can be summarized in one sentence: Samsung apologizes for not being innovative enough. Now, we should give Samsung some credit here. We don't see such acts a lot these days, but this just proved the point we were talking about. Samsung still makes great hardware. Samsung still makes some of the best foldable phones in the market, but simply, Samsung became greedy, focusing on marketing and price increases rather than new tech. The latest models from Samsung say it all. I came across this short these days, and it happens to be true. Everything is now a duplication of previous models, but with the removal of features like Bluetooth S Pen, and selling them apart for profit. And of course, putting AI on everything. Of course, this video focused only on Samsung smartphones, because Samsung crisis is beyond just a smartphone. It's a core problem. The company that once was an example of innovation and creativity has now become a brand that mainly cares about profit, aka Apple's copy. And to be fair, Samsung still excels even when copying. But come on, Huawei is under immense pressure and sanctions, yet it still delivers. Samsung will surely surprise us with its future inventions. But until that day comes, you can watch some of these videos, subscribe and like. Thanks for watching.